Hey everyone, today we are starting a new unit. We are starting Unit 3, which is going to be covering the digestive system, the urinary system, the nervous system, and the sensory system. Today we're going to be starting with Unit 3.01, specifically talking about the structures and the functions of the digestive system, and then later this week we will start covering the disorders of the digestive system. The main focus of this unit is to learn about the nutrient exchange system of the body as well as its communication systems. So first, let's start with the functions of the digestive system. The four main functions that you're going to be learning about are the physical breakdown of food, which is also referred to as mastication. This is the actual chewing and breaking down of the food within the mouth. Then we have the chemical digestion of food, which is the breaking down of the food into its end products, such as fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. And tomorrow during a lab, you will learn a lot more about those enzymes that play a role in chemical digestion. Next, we have absorption of nutrients, and you're going to learn about which organs of the digestive system are responsible for the main parts of absorption, and then elimination of waste products of digestion. Remember that after you chew your food and you swallow your food, it does get absorbed, the nutrients get absorbed into the body, and whatever's left over is what becomes poop, basically. So let's talk about some different vocab surrounding the digestive tract. In some cases, you may hear it referred to as the gastrointestinal tract. Remember that gastro means stomach, and then intestines are large and small intestines, which can sometimes be shortened down to the GI tract. It may sometimes also be referred to as the alimentary canal. And a fun fact is that your GI tract is approximately 30 feet long in length, starting all the way from the mouth to the anus. And to get a perspective of what that looks like, for any of you that have been inside of my classroom before, 30 feet is approximately the length from the wall where the windows are all the way to the front door of my classroom. So basically the whole entire width of my room is 30 feet long, and all of that is bunched up inside of our bodies. When we talk about the structures of the digestive system, we have primary structures and secondary structures, or accessory organs. Our primary structures include things like our mouth, which is sometimes referred to as our buccal cavity, our pharynx, which is our throat area, and you'll hear pharynx again down the road when we talk about the respiratory system. Your esophagus, which is actually another pipe below the pharynx where we take in food, which is not to be confused with the trachea. The trachea is the pipe or the tube in our body where we take in air. The esophagus is the one that takes down food. So sometimes if you were to get choked on food and you cough and you say, went down the wrong pipe, that's what we're talking about. So your esophagus carries the food down from your pharynx down to your stomach. And then of course you have your stomach, your small intestine, and your large intestine. Those are all the primary structures. Your accessory organs or secondary structures are things like our salivary glands, which are located in our mouth that help produce saliva, our pancreas, our liver, and our gallbladder. And we'll talk about what each of these do. So our mouth is where the food enters our digestive system. The roof of our mouth is formed by something called a hard palate and a soft palate. If you take your finger and you touch the front part of the roof of your mouth, it's pretty hard, and that is your hard palate. If you were to take your tongue or your finger and feel towards the back of your mouth, it starts to get softer, like way back there. That's your soft palate. Your tongue assists to help mix the food with the saliva and to break down the food with that chemical digestion. And you also have taste buds contained within the papillae of the tongue, which help you produce different tastes like bitter, sweet, salty, and savory. The tongue and the palate help to assist and move the food down from the mouth into the pharynx, and the uvula is the little flap that hangs off of your soft palate and prevents food from going down into the nasal cavity during swallowing. When we talk about the mechanical breakdown of food, we have to talk about the teeth because they're the main component that help break those larger chunks into smaller pieces that eventually form a bolus that we swallow. Your gingiva are your gums that help support and protect the teeth, and then you have two different types of teeth, your baby teeth and your adult teeth. Deciduous teeth is the fancy name for your baby teeth, and you start off with 20 of those, which eventually fall out and are replaced by your permanent adult teeth, which you have 32 of. The word mastication means chewing, and this is what helps aids in mechanical digestion. And together, the saliva and the food particles mix to form something called a bolus, which is what you end up swallowing. When we're looking at salivary glands, we have three main pairs that we need to look at: your parotid, sublingual, and submandibular. Now, the word sub means below. So if we look at the word submandibular, we know that it means below the mandible. Your parotid gland is the largest gland, and it makes up this side of your mouth here, you can see on the image on the screen. And then sublingual means below the tongue. So the gland located below the tongue is your sublingual gland. These help produce saliva, which helps to moisten the mouth and aids in other parts of the digestive system. And they begin that breakdown of carbohydrates with salivary amylase, which again, we're going to talk more about salivary amylase in tomorrow's lab that we're going to do together. Next, we have the pharynx, and this is what we commonly refer to as the throat. And remember that you're going to hear the word pharynx again in the respiratory system. This is a muscular tube that connects the posterior mouth, and it serves as the passageway of food and air from the mouth to their tubes. And so for food, it would be from the mouth to the esophagus, and for air, it would be from the mouth to the trachea. Your esophagus is a long, hollow tube which connects that pharynx all the way down to the stomach. And the walls of the esophagus help to propel food using this rhythmic wave, which is called peristalsis. Peristalsis is the actual act of swallowing the food, and it helps contract and release to push the food down the esophagus. Next, we have the stomach. And the stomach is actually a muscular sac that helps to store the food and allow time for proper digestion. Something called hydrochloric acid combined with different digestive enzymes help to continue digestion that began in the mouth and help break down the food even further in the stomach. Peristalsis is what helps to move that food into the small intestine. And you have a couple of different sphincters that are important to note in the stomach. The first one is the cardiac sphincter. And this is a small circular muscle that actually controls the passage of food from the esophagus into the stomach. So where the esophagus connects to the stomach, there's actually a circular muscle that contracts and dilates to let food enter from the esophagus down to the stomach. Then you have on the other end of the stomach a pyloric sphincter. The pyloric sphincter is this another circular muscle that contracts and dilates to help food pass from the stomach into the duodenum. Rugae is a fancy word for the folds that are found in the mucus lining of the stomach, which helps the stomach allow for stretching and to hold more or less food. Next, we have the small intestine. Your small intestine is actually divided into 3 different segments and is longer than the large intestine. The reason the small intestine is called the small intestine is because it's smaller in diameter than the large intestine, but it's actually longer in length. The first section, or the first part of the small intestine, is called the duodenum. And this curves around your pancreas and is 12 inches long, or 1 foot. The jejunum is the middle section, or the second part, and it's 8 feet long. And then the final part, the ileum, is 10 to 12 feet long in length, and it makes up the largest portion of the GI tract. Most absorption of nutrients takes place in the small intestine, not actually in the stomach like some people want to believe. So the actual absorption of nutrients and the absorption of the things that our body needs are actually absorbed in the small intestine. Digested food then passes into the bloodstream and onto the body cells, so things like fats, carbs, and proteins. Anything that is not being digested or is not digestible will then pass on to the large intestine, where it will become a waste product. The pancreas, which is an accessory organ, so it's not a primary organ, is located behind the stomach, and it serves as both an exocrine and endocrine gland. In the exocrine function, it helps to secrete digestive enzymes, and in the endocrine function, it helps to secrete insulin, which you'll learn more about during the endocrine system, helps to control our blood sugar levels. The liver, which is also another accessory organ, is located behind the diaphragm in the upper right quadrant. So the diaphragm is that muscle that sits right below the chest that helps to contract and relax to allow our lungs to expand. Connected to the gallbladder and the small intestine by its ducts, the liver helps to produce and store glucose in the form of something called glycogen. This helps detoxify alcohol, drugs, and other harmful substances and get them out of our blood system. It also manufactures blood proteins, manufactures something called bile, and helps to store our vitamin A, D, and B complexes. The gallbladder is a really small green organ which is on the inferior surface of the liver. It stores and concentrates bile until the body needs it. And technically, you can live without your gallbladder. So in some cases, when the gallbladder becomes infected or it's not working properly, doctors will actually just go ahead and remove the gallbladder from a person. And then basically that system just gets rerouted. When fatty foods are digested, bile is what's released to help with the breakdown and digestion of fat. And so that's why people who have had gallbladder surgery typically need to eat lower fat diets, because they don't have that extra bile in their system to help break down that fat. The large intestine is what comes after the small intestine, and it is approximately 2 inches in diameter. So remember, it's called the large intestine because it's larger around than the small intestine. And it's also sometimes referred to as the colon. So if someone has a colonoscopy, that means they're sticking a scope up into the large intestine. The cecum is the lower right portion of that large intestine. The appendix is a finger-like little projection that comes off of the cecum. It's located down here. The anus is the actual external opening of the large intestine, and the rectum is the last part of that large intestine. And then you have something called chyme, which is a semi-liquid food. It's basically the state that the food is in once it reaches the large intestine. The large intestine is really helpful in removing excessive amounts of water. So it reabsorbs excess water back into our system and helps create the final waste product of poop to be excreted from the body. So again, if you're looking at the process of digestion, the process includes your physical or mechanical digestion, which is when food is broken down into smaller pieces, and this happens in the mouth with the process of chewing, and then peristalsis helps to move that food down our system. Chemical digestion is the secretion of various enzymes throughout the digestive tract, which help to break the chemical bonds of the food, making them small enough to digest. Absorption is when those nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine, and then water is reabsorbed as needed in the large intestine. And then finally, the process of elimination is when any undigested material, along with the water, bacteria, cellulose, and fat, become poop or feces, also known as stool. Feces is then eliminated through something called defecation, or also known as a bowel movement. So when you have to go to the bathroom. Electrolytes and vitamins are important in the digestive system because they play many different roles, and they're also important in other systems like your nervous system and your endocrine system, which we'll learn about later. Sodium is one of the most important minerals that you're going to learn about, and that it is actively absorbed in the large intestine. Potassium is absorbed and secreted based on different levels that the body needs. Your vitamin K and vitamin B, including things like biotin, are produced by bacteria in the large intestine. And then some of these vitamins are then also absorbed back into the blood after the process of digestion. That is everything for the process of digestion, and we talked about all of the structures and the functions. So go ahead and continue working on the rest of your assignments for today, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for our digestive system lab, where we are going to be making edible fake poop, and you'll have some questions that you'll go along and answer. This is a really fun lab, and I hope that if we have time after we come back to school, that I'll be able to do this all with you guys later. But for tomorrow, I'm just going to show myself demonstrating it, and we'll talk through the process while you follow along with some questions. And if you really want to do this at home yourself, you can go out and buy the materials and do it yourself later. So that is it, guys. Have a great day.